Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order our Thursday, September 9th public meeting of the Missoula Board of County Commissioners. I'd like to acknowledge that this event takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. Please join me and join in with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with justice for all. We have two proclamations this week, one pertaining to Suicide Prevention Week and one related to the upcoming remembrance of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. As far as the first proclamation, before we read it, I think Commissioner Barrows is going to read this one. Did we have anyone? Nancy, I see you out there. Is there anyone who wants to speak to this particular resolution, and this being Suicide Prevention Week?
I'm happy to say a few things.
Hi.
Hi.
Can't hear you.
I think you're muted. Is there anything that you would like to say?
Am I muted?
You're still muted.
Huh, it doesn't show me as muted.
Oh, okay. Well, while you're figuring that out, Commissioner Vera, would you like to read the proclamation?
I'll go ahead and read and we'll get back to you, Nancy. Whereas this proclamation recognizes suicide as a community-wide problem and suicide prevention as requiring a community effort, and whereas Montana's suicide rate is the third highest in the nation and has ranked among the top 5 states with the highest rates of suicide for the past 4 decades. And whereas since 2017, Missoula County has suffered 120 suicides, and whereas suicide by firearm accounts for 51% of all suicides in the United States and 68% of all suicides in Montana, and guns stored in the home are used for suicide 40 times more often than for self-defense. And whereas it is important to support our new National Suicide Prevention Lifeline call center here in Missoula, along with our new mobile response units who can effectively and empathetically intervene in crisis situations, and whereas our community will support suicide prevention efforts to the maximum extent possible with initiatives like Project Tomorrow Missoula, which works to reduce Missoula County suicide deaths and attempts through education programs, evidence-based policy. Now, therefore, in coordination with National Suicide Prevention Week, we, the Missoula Board of County Commissioners in Montana, do hereby recognize the week of September 7th to 14th, 2021 as Suicide Prevention Week.
Nancy, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Great. Okay, good. I have one moment here and that'd be a shame to be on mute. I just wanted to thank you all for the support that you show our work in suicide prevention, first off. And just point out that was the part of the proclamation that I just wanted to highlight was the fact that Missoula has, created a mobile support team so that we can have appropriate responses to mental health crises. I think it's a really important support for our police and for the people who are in crisis to have that kind of more tailored crisis support. And the other thing is the Western Montana Mental Health Center has become a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline call center. And because the state legislature did fail to support that financially, but they didn't pass a bill that would have added a 10-cent tax to our cell phone bills to support the Lifeline call centers here in Montana. I think we really need to figure out how we can in Missoula County support our own Lifeline call center. So I would love to be part of the thought process on that. And the other thing that I'll just point out quickly is we continue to have a very high rate of firearm suicides in Missoula. The national rate is about 50%. And so far this year in Missoula County, 87% of our suicides have been by firearm. It's a really shocking number. And we're going to work through our Project Tomorrow Suicide Prevention Coalition to try to educate gun dealers in signs of suicide. because a lot of these suicides are very impulsive acts where people are literally going out one morning, purchasing a firearm, and are dead by the afternoon. We don't want to have a lack of knowledge be a reason for that kind of tragic behavior. So that's all I'll say for now, but I also just want to put myself out there as a resource to you all. If there's anything that I can do ever to support you, or information that I can get to you, if you're interested in this issue, I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate that. Is there any other comment on this proclamation or Suicide Prevention Week? All right. Thank you. Thanks for your work on this important topic, Nancy. Commissioner Slotnick, the next one.
Thank you, sir. I have a proclamation as well. This is regarding the anniversary of 9/11. Whereas the Missoula County Commissioners support coming together as a nation and ceasing all work or other activity for a moment of remembrance on September 11th, 2021, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks committed against the United States on September 11th, 2001. And whereas at 8:46 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, hijacked American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the upper portion of the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City, New York. 17 minutes later, hijacked United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Thousands of people were working in these buildings at the time of the attacks. Whereas at 9:37 a.m., hijacked American Airlines Flight 77 hit the west wall of the Pentagon, causing immediate loss of life and catastrophic damage to the headquarters of the Department of Defense. And whereas at approximately 10 a.m., the passengers and crew of hijacked United Airlines Flight 93 heroically retook control of the airplane and crashed their airliner in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. They gave their lives to save countless others. And whereas nearly 3,000 innocent civilians were killed in the heinous attacks of September 11, 2001, and whereas tens of thousands of individuals narrowly escaped the attacks at the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, and as witness to this tragedy, are forever changed. And whereas countless fire departments, police departments, first responders, governmental officials, workers, emergency medical personnel, and volunteers responded immediately and heroically to those horrific events. And whereas the Fire Department of New York suffered 343 fatalities on September 11th, 2001, the largest loss of life of any emergency response agency in United States history. And whereas the Port Authority Police Department suffered 37 fatalities in the attacks, the largest loss of life of any police force in United States history in a single day. And whereas the New York Police Department suffered 23 fatalities as a result of the terrorist attacks. And whereas thousands of workers who spent time in or near the dust and rubble at Ground Zero and at the Staten Island landfill where debris was taken have been diagnosed with a growing number of chronic conditions and illnesses. And whereas 20 years later, the people of the United States and around the world continue to mourn the tremendous loss of innocent life on that fateful day, and whereas 20 years later, thousands of men and women in the United States Armed Forces remain in harm's way, defending the United States against those who seek to threaten the United States. And whereas on the 20th anniversary of this tragic day, the thoughts of the people of the United States are with the victims of the events of September 11th, 2001, and their families. And whereas September 11th will never and should never be just another day in the hearts and minds of all people of the United States. Now, therefore, we, Dave Strohmeyer, Josh Slotnick, and Juanita Vero, Missoula County Commissioners in the state of Montana, hereby recognize September 11th, 2021 as a national moment of remembrance on the 20th anniversary of September 11th, dated this 9th day of September 2021.
Thanks, Josh. Is there any comment related to this proclamation? Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda? And again, as I repeat often in these meetings, if you are online using Microsoft Teams and want to comment now or during one of our public hearings, please use the raise hand function and we will call on you in the order in which you raise your hand, or at least try to. If you're calling in via phone, at the point in time where I ask for phone callers, please unmute yourself, hit *6, and introduce who you are and share with us your comments during the public hearings that will follow or during this public comment phase on non-agenda items. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, be as succinct as possible, and try not to repeat others. So with that, any public comment on items not on today's agenda? All right, we will roll into the current claims list. So this would be claims received by the Commissioner's Office between August 24th and August 31st of this year, and they total $3,405,179.91. We have a whole raft of public hearings today, and we will dive right into them. As usual, we will begin with a staff report followed by a presentation or comments from an applicant or applicant's representative, and that will be followed by a period of public comment to be followed by questions and discussion amongst the commission and a motion and voting on that motion. Our first public hearing is related to annexation petitions for Frenchtown Rural Fire District. And is Lisa Frost, or who is making this presentation for us today? A masked person coming up to the microphone.
I am Lisa Frost, and I am the Deputy Clerk with the Clerk and Recorder's Office for Missoula County. And I am here to state that a petition for annexation to the Frenchtown Rural Fire District has been submitted to the Clerk and Recorder's Office. The area to be annexed is described as follows. Tract 2 of COS 6334 being a portion of Government Lot 13 in Section 7 and the southwest quarter of Section 8, Township 16 North, Range 23 West in Missoula County, Montana. It's located at 29404 9 Mile Road in Frenchtown, Montana. This has been signed by the property owners who represent at least 40% of the acreage and 40% of the taxable value of the property to be annexed. Notice of this hearing has been published twice in the Missoulian. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is there any public comment on the proposed annexation into the fire district? Any public comment? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions from the commission?
Do we have any comment from the fire district?
Do we have any comment from the fire district? Lisa?
That was the obvious question.
Yes, do they take exception with this? Are they supportive or
Welcoming.
otherwise?
They are supportive. They have signed off and they submitted everything to our office.
Okay, excellent. It is on the record.
Well, that's enough for me. And I'd move we annex this into the.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Lisa. Our next public hearing, which I'll open, is on the proposed West Point phasing plan extension / modification / plat adjustment. Bailey, please provide us a staff report.
Good afternoon. Well, I'm going to keep it really short and simple. This project was originally on your agenda back on August 12th. They had asked for more time to deal with some of the public comments that had come up. So we had postponed or left the public hearing open to today. But since then, they have actually asked for additional time. They're trying to get some estimates and different things like that to get that the information on the infrastructure issues dealt with. And so they've actually asked us to postpone this again until October 14th. So I have a proposed motion that I threw up there for you guys to continue leaving the public hearing open and just move this to the October 14th. And Jamie is on the call too, if there was any questions you guys have or if she wanted to say, but that's pretty much all I was going to put up there for you.
So a question for John. I don't remember ever having to make a motion to keep a public hearing open. We just typically have kept it open. Is this something we need to do formally today?
It's not going to hurt to do it formally. The motion's up there. But of course, you'll want to take any public comment today from people who came ready to comment before you move to table it or table it.
Okay, good enough. So is there any public comment on this item? And the item being either the substance of the issue, the phasing plan extension / modification / plat adjustment, or what we're about to contemplate doing, and that is extending or leaving open the public hearing. Josh?
So Bailey, these, the developers in question, did they ask to keep this open because they have not yet met some requirement that we've asked them to meet?
Yeah, yes. So we, one of the requirements of, like, in order for us to support, their proposed project, one of the criteria is that some of the infrastructure, it has to be standalone phasing, things like that. And so one of the things they're looking at is the subdivision improvement agreement, which ideally should be executed before we deal with this. So that's one of the things that they're working on. And so that it's taking just a little bit more time to get that through that process.
And so the subdivision improvement agreements require a letter of credit from a bank. I remember John describing this, guaranteeing that the money's there. If they can't get the work done, the bank will pay for it and they'll owe the bank. But the people who buy into this subdivision won't be buying into something without the proper infrastructure being there. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring this up to say that getting such a letter of credit from the bank and doing this type of financing is difficult, especially with really complex and big projects. And we're really excited about more housing, and that this delay is not because it's on Tim's desk and he's at that music show I referenced a couple of weeks ago. It's just that this is complex, and I keep beating this drum because there is sort of a refrain out there that, oh, we're just slow in doing our jobs. And I want to highlight that this is complicated stuff, and it isn't. And the complexity often falls on the shoulders of the developers who have to get this financing done and then hire people to do the work. And there's just a lot to it.
It is. It's and this is just a very big project, very complex. And it's an older subdivision. So obviously there's a lot of intricate details. And so, yeah, we're just working it out, and hopefully we can get it here to you guys here soon. And I wasn't sure if the motion was the right way. I just know we had
Okay.
the reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're all about belts and
Yeah.
suspenders here.
We can
Some
flex
state,
and be flexible on the fly. So
Works for me.
no worries at all.
Okay, before we take up the motion, Jamie, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Nothing additional. I just appreciate the commissioners keeping this meeting open and continuing it till the 14th. I have reached out to Dax Kewen, who was one of the concerned homeowners within the subdivision. I still need to reach out to Laura Zempel, I think is her last name. Is how you pronounce that. So there is some ongoing work with the homeowners association, but we are putting together that subdivision improvements agreement, and we'll get that coordinated with John Hart and executed before October 14th is our goal.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on this? All right, what do you think about a motion?
Okay, I move to leave the public hearing open for West Point Phasing Plan Extension Modification Plat Adjustment and continue this item to the October 14th, 2021 meeting.
I'll second that.
Any further?
Commissioner,
Holy
sorry,
smokes.
there is a hand up
Oh
in
my
the
goodness.
audience, Laura Z.
Okay,
Sorry,
Laura.
Let's get Laura in.
Hey, this is Laura Zump, and I was just gonna make sure that Jamie, that you have our contact information, because we would love to hear from you.
Yes, I believe I had it through Bailey.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
We will look forward to hearing from you.
That was a little bit of a letdown.
We're hoping for
That was
something
something
juicy,
really
but
good.
that's okay. Glad to hear that Laura and Jamie, you'll both be in touch. I think Laura, you might have joined us at the last discussion of this, so hopefully you
Yep.
can connect up. All right. Any other public comment? Was that what Tim Worley's hand was up for earlier? Okay. Way to be astute. All right. We've had a motion
Motion
and
to
a second,
second.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. It will remain open until October 14th, the public hearing. Our next public hearing is the Madison Hoffman family transfer. And Nick, you will bring us the staff report whenever you are plugged in and ready.
Commissioners. Let me pull up my notes. We get started here. So this is the Madison Hoffman family transfer. I'm going to start with a project background here. So the location of the proposed transfer is just west of West Riverside neighborhood at the base of Woody Mountain. It is accessed off of Zog Drive. The land is unzoned. The growth policy that covers this area is the 2019 land use element. That plan calls this area residential with a recommended density of 3 units per 1 acre to 11 units per 1 acre. Getting into the existing on-site conditions, the parcel is 7.9 acres in size. There's currently 1 home on the property occupied by the claimant and 1 detached garage structure. Current density is 1 dwelling per 7.9 acres. The proposed transfer would result in the claimant's adult daughter, Laura Lee Allen Hoffman, receiving a 3.95 acre tract, which is proposed as tract 2B. The claimant would retain ownership of lot 2A, which does include the home and garage structure. With this proposal, the density would be 1 dwelling per 3.95 acres, which is compliant with the land use element. The application states that all tracts are intended to remain single family residential, and the purpose of the transfer is for Laura Lee to reside next to her mother. The application was sent for agency comment to agencies across Missoula, when we did not receive any comment on the proposal. During staff analysis, there was no rebuttable presumptions or no evasion criteria triggered during staff analysis. And next, I will go over the family transfer questions with the claimant, which I believe an audience. Or
Yeah, come on up to the microphone, please. And if the green light is not on, hit the button at the base of the microphone and activate the microphone.
I'm Deborah Matson, the
Hi.
landowner. Hi.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm just gonna ask you a few standard questions here that we go through with every family transfer applicant. So number 1, did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No,
Great. Number 2, do you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
yes,
Number 3, have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review before?
no, not at the county.
Then the recipient is not a minor, so we'll go through questions 4 and 5. Question 4 is, will the property be developed?
The property that's transferred, she's planning to put a home on it. And yeah, it will be developed, yes.
Thank you. And then will the recipient on the property be residing on the property?
Yes,
Those are the questions, and staff is recommending approval of the proposed transfer.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add, Ms. Matheson?
I just have a question listening to Nick, and that is, you were talking about, is it just description of the property that one family home on 3.9? Or is that like going to be zoned in that way?
No, so that's just your density that will be on the ground. That won't be an actual zoning.
Okay, so it's,
designation.
yeah, it's
Yep.
not a zoning
Correct.
thing. Yeah, that was a really good presentation. And I just wanted, that's the only question I have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Is there any public comment on this proposed family transfer? Any public comment online or in the room or on the phone? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Questions from the commission?
No, it's kind of refreshing to get one of these that's so crisp and clean.
Yes, I will say to any of the consulting firms who are in the room or online, I love to see these family transfers that comply substantially with the growth policy and are involving adult children. So just saying.
Your 12-week-old Pomeranian cannot own land.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions or a motion?
I would move we approve this family transfer.
There it is right
There it is. Thanks. Okay. I'll say it better. I would move that the request by Deborah Matheson to utilize the family transfer exemption to create and transfer one parcel to her daughter Laura as presented in the exemption application and affidavit be approved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Hey, thanks,
Thank you,
Deborah.
Laura.
Laura.
Good luck with
Thanks,
your
Nick.
project. Yeah, thanks, Nick. Okay. Moment of transition. Tim, are you wanting to get plugged in up here? So I will go ahead and open the public hearing on our next item, and this is Alpine Trail Subdivision Notice of Intent to File Phases 3 and 4. Tim Worley will be bringing us a staff report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Tim Worley with CAPS. And this is a notice of intent to file phases 3 and 4 of Alpine Trails subdivision. This is a 30-lot major subdivision on the north end of the Seeley Lake community. It's on about 52 acres. This subdivision was approved on September 14th, 2018. And phases 1 and 2 have been filed thus far. This is a phasing plan of Alpine Trails showing the 4 phases. The 2 westernmost phases have been filed so far, and phase 3 and phase 4 are the 2 phases on the eastern edge of the subdivision. So the process that we reviewed these under is in state lots in 76-3-617. It addresses phased subdivisions that have come into being since May 2017. And we assess these projects for any changed primary criteria impacts and any new information on potentially significant adverse impacts. The primary review criteria are those which you, I believe, are familiar with, Commissioners. Impacts to agriculture, to agricultural water user facilities, impacts to local services, to the natural environment, wildlife and wildlife habitat, as well as public health and safety. We did document one impact that we think is worthy of note, and that is a locked gate on the northern edge of the subdivision on Sos Road. I think in the staff report, I may have referred to it as Sos Lane, but it's actually Sos Road. And this gate location is actually adjacent to the northern edge of phase 1. Just to provide some context, Morrell Creek Road runs along the northern edge of the subdivision, Highway 83, Cedar Lane, and this allows for access through the subdivision by way of, I think it's Wilderness Trail. And the gate is right here, so somebody proceeding from the south would be stopped here and would have the option of going this direction, but not this direction. So we do note that there are impacts regarding local services and public health and safety, as well as physical access due to this gating issue. And I wanted to note a few excerpts from the subdivision application that confirm that this was going to be essentially a free and clear access for the subdivision. This is taken out of the subdivision application. The 3 points of access for this proposed subdivision connect with existing roads, Sos Road and Cedar Lane, and to improve/relocate an existing access, as is the case with the access from Highway 83. And also, there are existing fire hydrants on Sos Road and Cedar Lane that comes out of the subdivision application again. And we note that because there is a hydrant on the north side of the gate that still is accessible from the north, but I think provides less of a measure of protection considering that that is a locked gate at present. And finally, the proposed subdivision will have 3 access points. One access will be Alpine Trail, which will come east off Highway 83, connecting east to SOS Road. A second access point will be off Morrell Creek Road, including the extension of SOS Road to become Wilderness Trail to the south. A third access point will be Seclusion Point, which extends north of Cedar Lane opposite Elm Drive. These access points are shown on the preliminary plat. That's out of the project summary. There is also a condition of approval related to the maintenance of SOS Road. A road maintenance agreement was required to be filed so that the developer of Alpine Trails, as well as other responsible parties, could sort out their roles and responsibilities for taking care of SOS Road. We did get one community comment from Stephen and Lorraine Lowe, which are adjacent property owners. They were concerned that their comments weren't heard during the original subdivision review. They feel that the county's agenda is to obtain revenue from the development of this subdivision. They felt that the road, and I'm not sure which road they mean, maybe the one on the southern edge of their property, ends up being too close to their fence. They're concerned about traffic on Nordic Way, and that the homes within the subdivision have become vacation rentals. So we acknowledge the receipt of the notice of intent to file phases 3 and 4, and we support the filing of those phases, of course. But we have documented a significant impact, but we feel it could be mitigated through a condition of approval. So the condition that we are recommending is that the SOS lane, gate, and any related physical access impediment shall be removed prior to the filing of phases 3 and 4, subject to CAPS inspection and approval. I do have a motion if I can get my slides to move forward. There we go. It's a little bit of a long motion, commissioners, but it's, I move to acknowledge the notice of intent to file Alpine Trails phases 3 and 4, and that a potentially significant adverse impact to local services, public health and safety, and physical access has been documented, but will be mitigated prior to the filing of phase 3 and phase 4, subject to the required condition of approval. This ends my presentation. I'll be available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Would the applicant or applicant's representative like to speak to us?
Thank you, commissioners. For the record, I'm John Kellogg with Professional Consultants. Kevin Weatherall is in via called Teams. So if you have questions for Mr. Weatherall, he'd be available to answer them. What, Mr. Weatherall,
help holding that? Maybe Nick.
No,
could,
I'm okay. I can hold it.
Oh, okay, very good.
I'm good.
Very good.
You had requested a display of where the accesses come and go, and that's what I was presenting here.
Maybe we can just put it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Commissioner Vero is leaping into action to get a chair
Oh,
/ easel.
wow.
I can't see it behind the podium.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Perfect.
Just-
And I can hold it up too
Okay,
if
we
it
can just
you want
rest it
that.
on.
Okay.
Oh,
Good.
nicely
Can you
done.
all see it?
Yeah, well done.
Up.
This-
Maybe we'll just use it for a little more and
Sure.
rest.
John, how long did you have to charge that thing up for?
Yeah.
We're old
The
school.
technology I'm not familiar with.
How much are you charging your client for this?
Zillions of dollars.
Okay.
Kevin has set up a couple of things at this gate here. One is a sign that says, do not block driveway, 24-hour access required. A second thing that he has done is provide a lock with a combination that matches the emergency access gates throughout the Swan Valley. And so with 911, oops.
Nicely done.
With an emergency access through the gate. So what he's provided is what was appropriately anticipated with the initial subdivision submittal. What's of concern, though, is the potential speed and access through this private road. The adjacent owners.
And John, yeah, John, you might need, yeah, if you could have the microphone there.
Okay. The adjacent owners were concerned with traffic coming up Wilderness Way and cutting through essentially a private road, but a road that has potential public access. That's the reason for this. And for general traffic through the subdivision.
Thanks, Nick.
Sorry, John, can you point to where the Lowe's are right?
The Lowe's live right here.
Okay.
So, John,
The gate is right here.
we sort of have an interesting, it's a difference of opinion in that the neighbors would like to have a gate because they don't want people to drive next to their property. And Tim is saying having a gate could restrict access for emergency services. And
Correct. And the solution that Kevin has provided is a 911 gate.
are there other examples of something like this where it works?
I think through
Tim.
Usually in a commercial or industrial subdivision context, we've seen the potential for lock gates on individual lots. I don't know that I've ever seen, well, Pontiac might be a more recent example, but I think that was an individual lot sort of lock gate scenario as opposed to one of the main points of egress.
So in the case at hand here, who owns the road? This is a private road. Does each adjoining property owner come to the center line, or?
It's kind of a hodgepodge. Some owners own portions of the road. They don't go to the center line. As I recall, the Lowe's own all of that, and there's an easement over the top of it that Mr. Weatherall has. But the idea of a 911 on a locked gate is something I believe the Forest Service and other entities in the forest use to allow emergency access if necessary.
Could you speak to the language that we saw on the screen earlier that in the subdivision approval language that specified that this would be an egress and ingress route?
This was not actually anticipated to be the ultimate outcome with a gate when the subdivision was initially proposed. It came up in the process of the development as traffic coming through this private road kind of disturbed the neighbors a little bit. And if I could just outline how traffic is anticipated here. Alpine Trails subdivision, 4 phases, and these roads are all built right now. We're finishing up the last roads in phases 3 and 4. But traffic if you're going to downtown Sealy Lake, you'd be coming through here. You would either cut down to Cedar Lane, and that's the real spelling of it, unfortunately.
Oh.
Or a surveyor long ago did that. And I've been arguing with our surveyors, but they won't budge. So you could probably go down Cedar Lane, or you would either take Alpine Trail out to Highway 83. And that way, whether you're going either north or south, you've got easy flow of traffic.
Mr. Weatherall, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you. I wanted to address just one thing about, there was a question if this is done other areas with the a combination lock provided for emergency response providers. And there is 3 areas that I know of in the Sealy Lake area specifically that currently have that situation, and that would be Riverwatch, Big Sky Lake, and Emerald Lake. And they all have the 0911 combination lock for emergency access, but it also acts to slow down traffic through those developments. And this, I understand Tim's point about, preserving the public safety, but this gate came about really in the spirit of protecting the public safety, because the Alpine Trails Homeowners Association and myself as the developers became concerned with locals using that road as through traffic, and they would just be speeding through there. And it's dangerous to the residents and to the kids in that area to have that through traffic. So locking this gate, yet providing emergency response access, I think addresses everything that was intended in the original approval, because we're providing public safety to the owners in the development and the residents and the children, in addition to providing emergency response with a known password access. Additionally, we placed the signage, no parking at any time, SOS road, private access only, and do not block the driveway, 24-hour access required. So, I feel like we've addressed that as well. The other thing that's of note is to think of using SOS road as an emergency egress. I suppose it could happen, and certainly emergency response providers and the Alpine Trails Residents and Homeowners Association have access to the code. But SOS road, likely in the event of a forest fire, which was referenced most often, puts people right out into the forest, because that's Forest Service land right there, and it puts them right out into the forest. So it's the most realistic scenario is that in the event of a wildland fire, it's coming from that direction, and that's not where you would want to provide egress and throw people into the path of danger. And there is, the 2 other points of access that have proved to be sufficient for the residents, and it has minimized the through traffic, which addresses the concerns of the adjacent resident who wrote the letter of concern for this. That addresses their concern as well. That's all I have, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. John, anything else? And then I want to take public comment, and then we'll come back to questions.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing, if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead.
Tim made note of the fire hydrant that's just north of that locked gate. Of note, there's actually another fire hydrant within the development that's only 3 lots south of that gate. So there's very accessible fire hydrants on both sides of the gate for all residents.
So the north fire hydrant is on the Lowe's property?
Yes, it's in front of the Lowe's property. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the south hydrant is 3 lots into the development.
Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
you want to add, John? Thanks, Kevin.
Access to that hydrant would be available to the fire department anyway with the 0911 opening the gate, and it could give them access right in there. And so SOS doesn't provide help with traffic flow. In fact, it directs it kind of incorrectly. Most traffic is going to want to head to Highway 83. And in doing so, you would either take the Alpine or the Cedar Lane routes to get out of there.
Will all the property owners know what the code is to open the gate if necessary?
Yes, Kevin was going to notify them.
Okay. Okay, let's hold just a second. Thanks, John and Kevin. I want to open it up for public comment. Is there anyone joining via Microsoft Teams online who would like to comment? If so, please raise your hand. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to comment? I'm not sure if we have any phone callers or not. If so, it sounds like there is one. Please hit *6 to unmute yourself, introduce yourself if you so desire, and start talking. Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Additional questions from the commission? And
I was confused about the Lowe's comment about a fence or
Road too close to a fence?
road being too close. Can you explain? Because SOS Road looks like it's on their property.
Yes.
Kevin has his hand up too.
Oh, sorry, Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin?
Sorry. To explain, the SOS Road certainly fronts near their fence, and the property does front, the Lowe's property does front on SOS Lane. The gate has really mitigated their concern there. Their other concern, their secondary concern, which really can't be resolved, is that they feel that the road is too close to their fence line on the south of their border.
Oh, okay, so the horizontal road with Alpine is too close to their southern border, that's what they're saying.
That's right.
Plus, in terms of they prefer that it be farther away, but it's not in violation of any
Breaking any rules.
rule.
That's right. And myself as the developer, we do own the land right to their fence line. We did try to set it off there. I think their letter referenced 10 feet. I certainly think it's further than that, but nonetheless, that's their concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, could you bring back up the language from, I'm assuming that was from preliminary plat approval that referenced the access roads and such. I guess I need some clarification on what it is that was approved several years ago. So in terms of, I guess the question for me at least is when we're talking about access, this is a private road. There's no public access easement, if I'm understanding correctly. So could access be construed as, in the case at hand, not public access that's free and open to anyone 24/7, but access that would be available to emergency providers if necessary? Tim?
I think it ends up being a finding that's just different than was anticipated. I think I think the developer, Kevin, I think he's improvising in light of the Lowe's concern, which we heard at the time of preliminary plat. And we really understand that local concern. It's not something that's lost to us. It's just that this wasn't part of the original application.
So I guess though, in terms of a private road like this, if this gate was, well, two questions. One, whose property is the gate on? And conceivably, if another portion of the road, of this private road, is owned by someone else, since it is a private road, that property owner could slap a gate on there, I'm assuming also, and completely close it off regardless of what any of us would want. Am I mistaken?
Well, I think the roads within Alpine Trails are all private. So there's some question as to, SOS was an area of significant analysis from CAP's standpoint and from the county attorney's office, just making sure that it was a legitimate access for egress originally. And the county attorney's office found that Kevin did grant essentially to himself an easement over and across what is SOS lane. So I think it's a legitimate private access. But the rest of the roads throughout Alpine Trails are also, to my knowledge, private as well. And I don't think there's really any sort of temptation to gate other portions. It's just that it's reducing egress points by one.
Right. Kevin, did you have your hand up for this?
Just one clarification is that actually the easement that's reserved over SOS Road is primarily the land belonging to the Lowe's, the adjacent owner. It's a weird shaped parcel, and they way back when they granted that road, it became part of their parcel. So their parcel has a long access easement road as part of their parcel. We initially owned that property, the Lowe's property, as we acquired the land for the development, and we sold it off. And in so doing, we retained a 60-foot wide access and utility easement for all purposes over SOS Road, which goes over their property. And to, I think it was Juanita's question, maybe not, but the gate is actually, it is on the Lowe's property, but it's within our easement.
Okay.
No, that's helpful. And I needed the history lesson there because it does look really goofy. And now I understand. So thank you.
Other questions? John, you're just anticipating a possible question. Okay,
Well, okay.
So
I would love it if Commissioner Slotnick, because he's so good at this. Can you explain the issue here? What is the issue?
Sure. Okay. Thanks. This is the issue. The issue, as I see it, is that the Lowe's would not like people driving by their property with any regularity as a way to pass through this subdivision and maybe shortcut in some sense for somebody getting to Highway 83.
Can you pause there for a second? Why would someone be driving through there?
That one's hard to imagine. I mean, maybe somebody's coming from the northwest. Maybe they're up in the woods and they want to get to 83 and they want to cut through the subdivision. No.
John, are you wanting to answer that?
Well, a suggestion, and I think this probably came up subsequent to the development of the first two phases of Alpine Trails. If you're coming up Wilderness Trail up to this point, you're more apt to keep going straight down a road than to turn off and cut down a different way. So the layout kind of encouraged people to go through to Morrell Creek Road.
Only because Alpine doesn't exist, right?
Pardon me?
Only because Alpine doesn't exist yet.
Well, it does now. It's constructed. Even when Alpine is constructed.
You still think people are going to continue north?
If they're heading up there, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go up the Swan Valley. I could go either direction. I'll just keep going straight and cut through here to Morrell. And that's a more natural tendency. And I think that's probably what was encouraged and maybe Kevin knows more intimately what the traffic pattern was. But I think that's the problem, that it encourages people to go that direction rather than calm and go out to the highway directly.
It doesn't look like a great inconvenience to make a left on Alpine.
No.
And there's still 2 points of ingress and egress.
Right.
So I'm personally okay with it.
Kevin had his hand up.
Kevin, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just get so excited about this. Just for clarification again, all of the roads shown on that plat are constructed as of now. So all of the roads are in place and all of the roads are usable and accessible, okay? Throughout the development, we have them all complete. They're basically awaiting your decision. So, and also for clarification, the gate wasn't only placed for concern of the Lowe's not wanting through traffic. It was also from concern of the Alpine Trails Homeowners Association, as well as myself as the developer, because again, what we didn't anticipate that John was talking about in the initial submittal is the through traffic that would occur. And Josh, I understand, or I think it was to you, Josh, but you know, why would people want to cut through there? I don't know, but they do. and so it's the amount of through traffic that was occurring was somewhat overwhelming. So this really has mitigated that and created additional safety for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is good to hear that all the property owners in the subdivision will know what the access code is to open it, because I will say it's not necessarily just a case of wildfires perhaps originating on Forest Service land to the north, but conceivably there could be a fire to the south or southwest that would create challenges for ingress and egress in the routes, the non-gated routes. Additional questions or comments by the commission?
No.
Or if someone would like to make a motion, I would entertain that.
I don't know what the words would be for this motion, but
Tim, you want to,
The complicated
why
one?
don't you cue it up again and,
I don't know that I would make.
Are these,
well, you can modify from what you
Okay,
see on the
great.
screen too.
Thanks.
So you can even make it active tense if you would like, rather than
Love that.
passive tense.
Tim, could you bring up what you have, please?
Yeah, and an alternative, if you choose just to leave the gate as is just to read through. I move to acknowledge the notice of intent to file Alpine Trails phases 3 and 4. I think you could just end it right there.
Great. That's what we'll do. All right, then I would move to acknowledge the notice of intent to file Alpine Trails phases 3 and 4.
second,
Further discussion, Mr. Wetherill, is that a lingering hand from earlier, or do you have something else you want to add before we take action? Okay, the hand is lowered.
Sorry, I just did not pull my hand down. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any further discussion by the commission? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
aye.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say thanks, Tim, for bringing that up. It was a good piece of discussion. So, and worthy to work through. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And like I say, I might have had a different viewpoint had the knowledge of what the access code was not distributed to everyone, which apparently now it's known by everyone in the Sealy Swan area. So,
And if I'm ever stuck behind a gate, I know what to do.
okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, our next public hearing relates to a proposed 310 permit and maintenance plan on Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company's infrastructure. So Todd Cleats.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Todd Cleats, Missoula County Floodplain Administrator. And if I'm successful here, I will share with you a screen. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Wonderful. So in your package today, you have an application from the Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company for a 310 permit request for a maintenance plan. And that permit application came from the ditch writer, Race Prime. And I can go into that in great detail or just kind of summarize a little bit about what's going on. Your staff report.
Quick detail. Let's do that.
The quick detail? Great.
Quick and adequate.
The reason why you're seeing this is that the county commission has 310 permit jurisdiction within the city limits of 1946. And this particular irrigation structure first began in the early 1900s, and it's within those 1946 city limits. So instead of the Missoula Conservation District issuing these permits, that is your responsibility within this area. As part of 310 permitting requirement, you have a 310 team, which is made up of Lad Notek with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, Elena Evans from the Water Quality District, and then I represent you from CAPS. We met with the applicant on site. Where this is located is just downstream of the old Bitter Railroad line, right across from Ogren Field. And you can see some of this irrigation feature right here. And with that, this is known as the island, the West Broadway Island, that the city now owns, and it's done quite a bit of infrastructure and maintenance on this area. The irrigation company accesses their diversion through a newly constructed bridge over this canal, and this is the area on the far east side where they need to do their work on a regular basis. What they did several years ago without authorization was to go in and place these Jersey barriers into the stream channel. The county commission had received a request from Hellgate Valley back in 2018 to do the similar work that they're trying to do right now. And at that time, the commissioners had required that they remove these Jersey barriers. Hellgate Valley did not end up doing that. But rather than go through an enforcement process, we knew that the city was attempting to purchase this area. Well, at that time, they were trying to create a wave feature there, and they had agreed to remove these Jersey barriers as part of their process. That wave does not appear to be viable at this particular time, but Hellgate Valley has agreed to this time go ahead and remove what's remaining of these Jersey barriers. At this point, only one is still visible. The rest have been scoured out and fallen into a hole, which they will remove when this irrigation season is over. So again, you have your team reports, actual application, and then comments from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and the Water Quality District have been included and referenced in this proposed motion for you.
Thank you, Todd. Is there any public comment on this proposed 310 permit and maintenance plan? Anyone joining via Microsoft Teams who would like to comment? Anyone on the phone? Okay. Anyone in the room? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Questions from the commission?
I'd love for a question for Todd. So Todd, in terms of general damage or disruption to the river, is having Jersey barriers there worse or better than having heavy equipment down there once, or I guess maybe twice a year, to push gravels up as needed?
From the
back down.
Sure. From the fisheries perspective, it's better to use the natural material that's there, the natural gravels that will create some turbidity when they need to do this, of course. But from their perspective, it's actually Fish, Wildlife, and Parks recommendation that we permit and authorize what happens here to be consistent with what happens with other irrigation diversions along the Clark Fork, which is this seasonal push up and then push down the gravels after irrigation season. And note that it probably doesn't have to happen every year. And again, they haven't done this since 2018, and it had been some time before that they have done it, that they had to do it previously. And hopefully the city is successful in their purchase of this irrigation diversion as part of their desire to help develop that Mullen area. So what's the King plan or out that way?
Okay, thanks.
Additional questions?
No.
Or a treatise length motion before us to read?
I'll take a stab at the treatise length. Motion that the board modify the HVIC 310 10-year maintenance plan for work occurring between July 1st and October 31st to push up gravels as needed during irrigation season and smoothing gravels back down following irrigation season, subject to removing broken concrete and Jersey barriers from the channel at the end of 2021 irrigation season, which is now, right? Okay. And notifying CAPS a minimum 5 days prior to performing annual maintenance. Photos are to be submitted prior to excavation, documenting pre-excavation conditions immediately following excavation and after material smoothing has occurred.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? It seems like there's a clause missing about New England IPAs at Imagination Brewing right next door there, but any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, our final public hearing today is related to ARPA funding for the FY22 fiscal year, and ARPA meaning American Rescue Plan Act. And it looks like our county CAO, Chris Lonsberry, will provide the staff report for this.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Commissioners. So today I'm asking you to open a public hearing on your spending or proposed spending for the American Recovery Plan Act. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Hopefully now you all can see the start of our presentation. It's always hard. We lose the video of the room when we present, and so when we're remote. So just as a reminder here, the American Rescue Plan Act funds come in 5 categories, areas that you can spend funding. The first is supporting public health response to the COVID-19 emergency, addressing negative economic impacts, replacing the public sector lost revenue, premium pay for essential workers, and then water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So Missoula County is looking to fund projects in categories 1, 2, and 5, and so that's continuing the public health response for the COVID-19 emergency, addressing negative economic impacts, and then water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure as we look at the funding. So in that first category, which is supporting the public health response, we are looking at spending over the next 2 years for additional mental health services in our detention facility. That is a congregate facility. We're looking at spending $473,355. That will be to supplement mental health services in the detention facility and provide additional resources. As you know, Missoula County has been very fortunate in the fact that we've been able to maintain a lower census, a lower number of people who are staying in our detention facility, and that's helped with ours. But just like COVID has created mental health challenges in our community, it's also created mental health challenges or exacerbated them in our detention facility. The next is setting aside about $400,000 for an expansion of the animal control facility. And so during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, when Missoula County was first needing to create social distancing, one of the large challenges we ran into was at our animal control shelter. It's a very small amount of space for the staff and for the animals that were in there, and it created challenges around both adoptions, people bringing in animals that needed to be dropped off, but also for staffing. And so we actually have had to rent supplemental space in the form of a mobile home. Think of this kind of like a modular classroom space that's been used by schools in the past to allow us to be able to have staff adequately distanced. And so what we're requesting is to set aside $400,000 that can be used to help modify that space permanently. And that's what we're looking at related to the animal control shelter expansion. The next line item is the Naco prescription drug program, and that it's not really the Naco prescription drug program piece of it that we are, but the funding that comes from that program, which is a prescription discount card that folks can use when they go to get their prescriptions filled if they don't have insurance. We're actually looking to supplement that fund with $7,500. That money is used each year by members of our homeless community or unhoused community to help them to obtain things like driver's licenses, identification cards, social security information, birth certificates, in order to help them to apply for assistance. It's used quite extensively, and so we're looking to supplement that fund as we look towards our homelessness and mental health initiatives to the tune of about an additional $7,500. The next item is to fund, as part of the public health response, an epidemiologist position, for fiscal year 23. This would be housed in the health department to help them address some of the pandemic response. Specifically, this position helps them with being able to understand the way COVID-19 is spreading in our community and helps them and the health board to make decisions related to that response. This next item is a very low cost dollar item, but again, it's for our detention center. This is a mobile air ventilation system. It's $677. This system is actually used to create what we call a positive pressure environment when they are needing to go in and clean an area where we may have had either an inmate who might be a positive case, or we might have had a positive case that came in as an officer was booking them, but it allows them to go in and do that cleaning in a safe method. The next item on here is funding for our relationship violence services. This is something specifically called out in the American Rescue Plan to be able to fund, and so this will continue to provide services for victims of crimes through our Community Justice Department in the Relationship Violence Services Division, which provides those direct services. That's $280,000. And then the final large item in this is to set aside approximately $5.8 million for the continued public health response to COVID-19. And so those funds will be used to help support things like testing, contact tracing, which is not a covered activity under the Federal Emergency Management Agency, vaccinations. This is also the funding that we will look towards helping to support if we do reopen the Sleepy Inn for non-congregate shelter. Funding for this could be used to support that activity, which has been covered in the media. So when we add up that category of funding, what we're looking to spend is an amount up to $7,040,000 to cover that kind of ongoing public health response. And I'm going to go through all of the categories that I'm happy to take questions at the end from the commission and try to answer those as best I can. So the next are specifically system upgrades. This is in that category 2 funding to address the COVID-19 response in the way that it's impacted local government and some of our partners. So these first 2 items look to improve the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, or HVAC system, in 2 of our facilities. They're most heavily utilized, both in terms of COVID response, which is the health department. That's a $1.25 million system upgrade to improve the ventilation in there. We do know that improved ventilation, fresh airflow is one of the ways that we can combat COVID-19. The second is a major upgrade to the HVAC system at the detention facility. Again, that's a congregate facility where we have folks in confinement, and we need to improve our ability to address that positive airflow inside those facilities. The next item on there is $14,628. That is money to upgrade the Wi-Fi, the wireless network at the fairgrounds. That might seem like a bit of an odd response when you first look at it, but just as a reminder, our fairgrounds served a host of purposes during the pandemic response, and will continue to do those, including being a site where we did our first mobile testing for COVID, as well as had 2 different vaccination programs running on the fairgrounds during that time. One of the biggest challenges we faced during that was trying to get adequate network connectivity out there for the folks who were there administering those programs, and this would help to bolster that as we continue to use the fairgrounds for some of that emergency response. The next item is an upgrade to some detention facility secure doors and some of the it's called a security door and a port purchase, about $30,782. Again, these are updates in the detention facility specifically around COVID-19, and this is to help address and update and modernize some of those doors, which work on a pressurized system to help do that. The next is, again, another upgrade to a Missoula County system. This would be an increase to the firewall for our public internet. We do have quite a few folks who use the internet connectivity in our buildings as they're there to perform transactions or there for court. We need to upgrade that system to be able to just kind of address some of the ongoing increased traffic we have as we have more folks working remotely, and as well as the public needing access to that service. Last few items here for this category, the Fairgrounds Floriculture Building, changed the HVAC system there. Again, as a reminder, this building was what was used by the YMCA to provide childcare and daycare services during the pandemic. One of the challenges that we experienced over the winter was lack of adequacy for that system. So again, we want to look at just an upgrade to that system, because that would be the building, again, that the YMCA would use should we go back to a state where we need to provide some childcare options if we end up with closures again. So the American Rescue Plan also comes with, as you can imagine, a host of rules specifically around how this funding is spent. So this next request is for a multi-year funding for an FTE that would help to make sure that we stay in compliance with our requirements around ARPA, but also to look as we apply for funding for the state and directly from the federal government to help us with those applications and staying in compliance with those requirements around the American Rescue Plan. The next piece is a $60,000 reimbursement for the library security contract. As you can imagine, as they've opened their new facility and as we went through the pandemic, the library itself had a host of challenges, again, to address those public health responses. One of the methods that both the county and the library used was contracting with private security to help them enforce mask mandates, but also just to help us make sure that we're keeping good track of the folks as they're entering and exiting our facilities. And so that's what this request is. The last one in this category is a request for specifically somebody to be hired in our information technology department. This is a one-year request with the intention being that this would move into our general budget next year as a request from our IT department. And this is specifically for a cybersecurity position. And as you can imagine, we moved to a fully remote environment in a very quick period of time. One of the things that was noted by our chief information officer, who heads our internal services department, is that we really need to bolster our presence in the security world around cybersecurity to make sure that we are providing the most security that we can for folks. We have everything from confidential criminal justice information to private health information that rides on our network. And so making sure that we have a secure network is critically important for the county. So in this category, we're looking at about $2.73 million of spending throughout this next fiscal year. Next category is our water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. These are partnerships with both the state and some of the funding that they're putting aside. And so the first one of those is the Lewis and Clark wastewater system. The Lewis and Clark system is out in the Clinton area. That's about $40,000 to upgrade that system. The Lolo Water District, of course, is our largest water district and sewer district that we have in Missoula County. Request here for $939,000 roughly for improvements to that system, which will allow it to create a redundant loop in the system so that if they need to turn off water for leaks, it would not shut down the entire system. Sunset West is out in the area of the Y, and then the Elmar water system is off of Mullen Road out near the Ranch Club. Updates to those systems in this case would be related to well replacements and water treatment, $154,163. And then as part of House Bill 632, as passed by the legislature, there were different pots of money set aside, but one of the requirements is that the county match those funds dollar for dollar for any project that's going to be funded out of there. And the Public Works Department has put in for approximately $2.88 million. And so this would be our one-to-one match for that funding using the gas tax. So altogether in the water, sewer, and broadband categories, we're looking at about $4.1 million. So the last category that we're looking to spend funding in is in that bucket 2, but it's specifically around housing and mental health, which were services that were called out specifically in the American Rescue Plan as kind of those once-in-a-generation investments that will be able to hopefully move the needle on some really significant social challenges that both Missoula County faces, but we're facing around the country. And so that's what this last category is. The first one, the Poverello Center runs a homeless veterans program. They were successful in securing a $1 million grant that will allow them to create a permanent home for that program, which right now utilizes the second floor of the Poverello Center. By helping to fund the project that they're looking at taking in to the tune of $833,000 in partnership with the Poverello Center and the city of Missoula, that would free up additional space in our homeless shelter to help address some of our housing needs, as well as helping homeless veterans program to secure a permanent home for that. So that's the first request in this category. As you know, each year, Missoula County works in partnership with the city and the Poverello Center to provide additional living spaces. This was extremely critical this last year with the need in congregate care settings to make sure that we could provide that minimum 6 feet social distance. And there's a request this year for $100,000 to continue that program. The CDC's guidance around congregate care has not changed, and so the Poverello Center and other providers continue to have capacity limits that we don't necessarily see out in the rest of the public sector at this point, but they are still required to run with those capacity limits according to CDC guidelines. We're looking to spend about $1.5 million in additional funding towards the housing and homelessness initiatives. Those will go towards our efforts around the temporary safe outdoor space, securing permanent, not permanent, but stronger, longer lasting temporary housing that can be used in the form of pallet shelters, which is one of the temporary dwellings that can be used for that, as well as looking to help fund mobile care team and other items around that response, specifically also setting up a legally sanctioned campsite that we'll be talking more about. And then the final one in this area, we have been working closely with Missoula Aging Services to ensure that they're able to make sure folks who are homebound or who are unable to get out continue to provide meals. And so we're funding a supplemental amount to the Meals on Wheels program in the amount of $110,000. And then finally, in the area of mental health, as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the detention facility, we're seeing an added strain on our mental health system. So this would fund the mobile crisis response unit, which has been very successful, extend their hours up till midnight, 7 days a week, in the amount of $368,000. That's again in partnership with the City of Missoula Partnership Health Center and Missoula County to provide that funding. And then an additional amount set aside for additional mental health efforts in the amount of $632,000. So all told, between the multi-year and single-year requests, what you're looking at is a total spending authority of up to $17,333,000 for this next fiscal year. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and take any questions that I can answer from the commission. And of course, we're opening a public hearing here, so we'll also be taking public comments at the commissioner's email address, bcc@missoulacounty.us, as we look at this, and you'll have your final hearing at the end of this month on, and Violet, please correct me if I'm incorrect, but I believe it's September 23rd.
Violet, is that correct?
I think that's right. I'll confirm it 100% in just a moment.
And is the 23rd on a Thursday, so it'd be a Thursday public meeting?
Yep.
That is correct. Before we take questions, though, is there any public comment on the proposed expenditures of American Rescue Plan dollars that are coming to Missoula County? Any public comment? Okay, public hearing will remain open. Questions from the commission or comments from the commission?
Just had a comment. I want to thank Chris and Ann and all the rest of our staff for many hours of really good conversation on what we could do with this kind of once in a generation opportunity. And this list that we have right now is kind of our working together best first draft awaiting public comment. But I really wanted to thank all the staff for their many hours of work to get us to this point.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a question from Jordan Hansen.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Real quick, I just wanted to clarify that the ARPA money that the county is expecting to get is in the amount of around $23 million. I just want to make sure I had that number right.
That would be correct.
Awesome, thank you. And then the second thing too is I was wondering if any of those, if the ARPA money directed towards sewer and water was in consideration for the state ARPA infrastructure projects, or if that was kind of possibly being, looked at differently due to that process. I just was hoping for some clarification on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
You bet. So happy to answer that. So the $2.8 million that we're setting aside is the match for those state programs that we applied. We have grants in from House Bill 632 that the Infrastructure Committee met about last week. They've finalized their work, but the governor has not yet approved the list of projects. So that's why that money is set aside there. Some of those other smaller projects are being funded directly. Hopefully that answers.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
And Chris, when do we expect to hear back from the state?
If I remember correctly, in House Bill 632 from the committee's decision, the governor had 30 days, if I remember correctly. And so hopefully prior to our September 23rd hearing is when we would hear.
Great. So Jordan, if you have any influence, please exert it.
Other questions from the commission or comments?
Chris, the multi-year projects, there's maybe like half dozen of them, or which ones are those again? Or are they neatly put somewhere?
So they are called out in the PowerPoint, but I won't claim that they're neatly put somewhere. The reality is, so those multi-year projects primarily are around the ARPA grants administrator position, which will span a couple of years. And then we will also, that jail contract for mental health services will also span multiple years that we know for sure. I imagine that some of the projects, just given the nature of public works projects, may actually carry over into next year, but we will reflect that when you take up action on next year's budget, if folks were not able to expend the funds in this year.
Thanks.
Jordan? Jordan Hanson, do you have your hand up again?
Yep, sorry, I just left it open. Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
Let's move this needle.
Here you go. Well said.
Well, thanks, Chris. That was an excellent presentation. The public hearing will remain open until September 23rd. Is that verified, Violet?
Verified, yes.
It is verified. Okay, so folks should feel free to reach out to us. However your desired method of communication is, and we'll be glad to take your comments into consideration. Okay. With that, is there any other business to come before the commission this afternoon?
Chris's PowerPoint is up on our website, is that right?
I have no idea. Chris, where is your PowerPoint presentation?
So the PowerPoint was part of your agenda packet here, and I will see if we can make that available on the website between the hearings as well.
Okay, thanks.
I won't claim to have that technological wizardry, but I bet Mel or Allison does.
Okay. Thank you.
And that does bring up a good point. If anyone does want to access our agenda that includes all of the attachments that we discussed during these meetings, those are linked to the electronic version of our agendas on our website. Anything else? Okay, seeing none, we will be adjourned.